Hello there, people of the internet. The 3030 is kind of a strange name, and it's one of those names that has caused confusion, and I myself was also confused by this cartridge. So the 3030 is typically found inside of some sort of Winchester repeating lever action, a lot like this right here, except it is normally inside the Model 94 style of action. This particular one is a model of 92, and it is in 44 Magnum. My actual 3030 is actually back in the gun safe, and I don't feel like digging it out. And I saw this sitting right there, and I was like, that'll work. So this is what I'm using for representation of your lever action. And this right here should work pretty gosh darn adequately for that job. But your 3030, it came about in 1894 from Winchester. It was the first commercially available smokeless powder round. However, because of the name designation, I originally was under the impression that it started life as a black powder round. So the reason why I was under that impression is because of the name designation of 3030. It is designed in the same way that old school black powder cartridges were specified. Like, for example, the 4570, which came about in 1873. The 4570 is a 45 caliber bullet with 70 grains of black powder behind it. And so automatically, because of that right there, I just assumed that the 3030 with a similar name designation was a 30 caliber bullet with 30 grains of black powder behind it. So that's just kind of the assumption that I made. I thought that it was a black powder round, but it turns out it's a little bit more complex than that. Originally, whenever the 3030 had come out, I got a couple of 3030 examples right here. These are full-fledged rifle rounds. Originally, whenever these came out, they were smokeless, and they were called 30 Winchester Centerfire. These particular ones are the Winchester Silver Tips, and these are absolutely devastating whenever it comes to basically any kind of whitetail, any kind of medium game. As a matter of fact, maybe I'll run some tests with these Silver Tips. As a matter of fact, I think that over there in Texas, where they still use the death penalty, they have the option for you to choose death by firing squatting. I'm fairly certain that they use Winchester Model 94s that have these Winchester Silver Tips inside of them. I might be wrong about that in terms of the state, but I know that one of those western states or midwestern states over there, I know that one of them is using those somewhere, or at least they used to, back whenever I did that research, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. But it used to be called Winchester, like 30 Winchester Centerfire, 30 WCF, and the main reason why the 3030 name was adopted is because the 30 Winchester Centerfire had become such a popular cartridge that other companies wanted to make rifles chambered in that same cartridge because of its popularity. But they did not want Winchester's name on their rifle. So they took note that the 3030 was a 30 caliber round that had 30 grains of smokeless powder inside of it, and they rode with that 3030 designation in the same way that that they would have utilized the name if it was a black powder round, because it was a round designation, a cartridge designation that was extraordinarily familiar to people at the time. Nowadays, if we came out with something like that, people would just kind of look at it and be like, what the heck are you talking about? The 3040 Craig at the time was the same way. It was a 30 caliber bullet that had 40 grains of gunpowder behind it, so it was a little bit more powerful than your 3030, but not to the point of power as to say like a 30-06, which had more like 48 to 50 grains of gunpowder, depending on what time era it is that we're talking about and what bullet weight it is that we're talking about. But your 3030 back in the day, the reason why it was called 3030 was simply because most of the companies that were making guns didn't want Winchester's name on their rifle, and it was the 30 Winchester Centerfire, so 30 WCF. That was the caliber designation. That was what was going to be on the gun if they did not choose to call it some other cartridge. And the popularity of these other guns being chambered in 3030 just led Winchester to start calling the cartridge the 3030 versus the 30 Winchester Centerfire, and that name designation took off way more than 30 WCF and the cartridge became universally known as the 3030. And as it grew more and more popular over the decades, come say the 60s and 70s, it was probably one of the most popular cartridges here in the United States. Even to this day, it is quite popular, and people know it as the 3030 versus the 30 Winchester centerfire, despite the fact that's what its original name was. So, just because of companies' efforts to keep Winchester names off their rifle, that's why the cartridge was named differently than what it actually was, and that name designation caused some confusion. It really did. People who are not gun savvy and people who do not know, they do not know that 30 Winchester centerfire really is just 3030 with a different name. That is its original name, the 30 Winchester centerfire. And as a result of that, I myself originally thought that 3030 was a black powder round, when it turns out it is not. So that's where the confusion of that cartridge name comes in, and I was just fascinated by it, to the point to where I thought that I'd make a video on it. So thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. I actually made a video a long time ago on the 3030, and I said that it was originally black powder round, and I got a lot of hate for it. And it was one of those defining moments that made me realize, hey, most of the gun community doesn't want you to learn. They just want to harp on you for being wrong. So, hats off to you guys. I'll see you on the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.